Okay, everybody. So, good evening. Welcome to the kind of end of week roundup. Hope you're able to hear this, if not actually watch it. As you can see, this is an audio only podcasty thing. So, hope it's going to be okay for you. And there seems to be a little delay. Yeah, I just wanted to check out what the delay is. Good evening, Chris. Seems to be when I go live on YouTube, there's about a 30-second delay between me going live and you being able to hear me. So that's the slightly strange feature about this. But nonetheless, here we are, and it's been a pretty momentous week. So I thought we'd just take a short time this evening and just review exactly where we are and and find out what you make about it all. I mean, the obviously the dominant issue of the week has been the US presidential election. So we're going to talk about that, but it's also probably reasonable to talk about the fact that England, like the other home nations, is now back in a national lockdown. So I want to talk about that as well because I think it's kind of relevant. So those are really the big issues of the week, no matter how you look at them. I can't think of anything else that even comes near. So can I just say, by the way, that I know a lot of you folks watch this on replay. So if you do watch this on replay, do make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit the button, hit the bell, so you get notifications when I'm live. So yes, I see Chris here on the stream is saying the UK media has. Oh well, let's talk about the big topic then, I guess. And the big topic this week has been the US presidential election. Now, as you know, I am a big Trump supporter here, unapologetically, and I've watched this week with a degree of horror and bemusement and anger. I suppose those would be my three emotions. I've done a number of live streams this week. I don't know if I think you've probably seen some of them, but I've had several American folks on with me who obviously they're living and breathing it. They're all Trump supporters, and their optimism is admirable insofar as they seem to believe that Trump can somehow prevail. And that might be the case, but let's just kind of take a quick trip back in time to we sort of see, well, how did all this come about, really? And for me, it came about, we had the election. I don't know about you folks, but I sat up, watched the early stages of the election. It all seemed to be fine. Once hi Matrix, good to see you on the stream. It seemed to me that it was going pretty much as per plan. The polling organizations had proven to be yet again cataclysmically wrong. But of course, I don't think that the polling organizations, I don't actually think they were wrong. I think the polling organizations on the whole weaponized their polls to make it appear that Joe Biden was a shoo-in. So I think that's one of the things that comes out of this, that we seriously have to question what is the point of polling organizations apart from being essentially political operatives under, by other, in other words. So there was the fact that it seemed to start okay. When I went to bed, sort of around about 2 o'clock in the morning UK time, it seemed good. I got up at 4:30 UK time, still seemed good. Looked like it was going to be pretty much another 2016 again, with Donald Trump yet again confounding his critics, and that seemed good. I then got up at 7-ish, I think, around about 7 in the morning, exhausted. And then it started to seem that things weren't quite as they had appeared. So this was my experience, folks. It was like all of a sudden, polling had stopped for a number of hours in the middle of our night. So when the polls closed, and we suddenly seemed to have this phenomena of all these mail-in ballots appearing in vast quantities. And states that appeared to be going for Trump suddenly start to look very different. And we know where that one's gone since then. And as we speak here on a Friday evening, on Friday the 6th of November, it looks to me that the mathematics are that these swing states, which are the main crucial part of the election, all these swing states, which are run by Democrats, Democrat governors, have ended up going to Biden. The really curious factor being that in the presidential race, they've gone for Biden, but actually the Republicans have performed pretty well at level of Congress. So in terms of both Senate and the lower house, they've done okay. So I think it smells like something very, very rotten. And that's why, I feel kind of a bit sick about it. I feel nauseous that what we have often believed to be the world's biggest democracy is actually much more like Venezuela, more like the likes of North Korea. And that's because we appear, at least, the evidence needs to be made clear, but there's certainly lots of circumstantial data that looks very much like the Democrats cheated it. And that might explain one of the great mysteries. I mean, there's several great mysteries. Let me lay out three of them for you. First of all, we're being asked to believe in all confidence, in all sort of seriousness, that Joe Biden enthused more blacks to vote for him than Obama did. Do you think that's plausible? Is it likely that Sleepy Joe in his basement was able to get the black voters so enthused that they turned out in much bigger numbers than they did for Obama in 2008, back when it was all about America getting its first black president? So ask yourself, do you think that's plausible? And then the second thing to consider is the evidence suggests that President Trump polled better with the black community than he did in 2016. So that's strange, isn't it? So Trump's vote goes up in the black community, but the black community itself is so enthused by Sleepy Joe that they voted by mail-in, mind you, note by mail-in such numbers that that was able to essentially swing the election. Now, a couple of points here. Chris says the big hope was that Biden would win Florida, and when he didn't, the Democrats started the big fix. Actually, Chris, that's a really good point, because Florida was their great hope. You're dead right, actually. And so it was obvious from the early days of after the polls closed that Trump was winning big in Florida, and the Hispanics and the blacks, as well as other parts of the population, turned out for the president. So the big hope was smashed very, very quickly, although most media channels refused to call it for Trump. As I said, I went to bed at 1 a.m. or 1:30 in the morning, something like that. And it was obvious that Trump had won Florida. And yet the next morning at 6 or 7, the media still weren't calling it for Trump, which was really strange. So, but that's when everything changed. So I think the very great curiosity was the fact that this huge turnout amongst blacks for pale male Joe Biden seems a bit odd, doesn't it? And then the second oddity in this election is just the huge number of mail-in votes. In the past, we've seen the mail-in votes representing just a slither of the electorate. But this time round, the mail-in votes number in the millions. And of course, at that scale, any evidence of skullduggery and shenanigans becomes hugely problematical. And that appears to be what has happened. There's also been a lack of transparency with, for example, many count centers appearing to show those voting in full partisan gear, wearing, for example, Biden masks in Philadelphia. Actually, somebody commented on that. Whenever I put up, I think I might have it here. I'll show you. Whenever I put up this picture, this was in Philly. And as you see, these couple of ladies are counting the ballots, and both those ladies have got their Biden 2020 mask on. Now, the thing that I saw in this, by the way, was the fact that here were a couple of people working in a polling station, plainly with partisan, apparel on. The colour of the people concerned is irrelevant to me. I noticed one little nasty racist on social media somewhere, I think, was accusing me of being a racist for simply pointing out that I think it's illegal. Certainly, it should be for those counting to demonstrate clear political allegiance. Don't you agree? I mean, everyone's entitled out there, of course, to have their opinion, but it's very strange that this sort of thing was allowed to happen. And we saw other things. I know you've seen these things, folks, but like we saw, for example, stories about military ballots being found in the trash in Pennsylvania. And actually, talking of Pennsylvania, I mean, Pennsylvania clearly was going for Trump. Trump was, I think, ahead at one point by, was it 700,000 votes when the polls were closed and the election started. But then when the mail-in ballots started to being opened, that's all changed. And I think as we speak, the likelihood is that Pennsylvania is being called for Biden, and that theoretically gives him the election. So again, the third point I would make is, isn't it so odd that in all these swing states where Biden was way behind Trump when the election was called and when the voting finished, when the polls were clearly showing that Trump was going to win these states, and when he did build up a very large lead, isn't it coincidental that the total number of mail-in ballots was just enough to, to get him over the line in every one of those constituencies? Now, yes, I know there's a recount going on in Georgia, but again, that's because just at the end, Biden managed to come up, care of the mail-in ballots, and get across the line. Yes, I see people saying a couple of comments here. Chris says, "What about Fox News calling Arizona early? Set the narrative for the night." Well, it was. I mean, the narrative for this is that Fox News is now unwatchable. Fox News is part of the swamp. Fox News just has lost it. It's gone for me with Fox News. Matrix says watermarked ballots may have been used to set up as a sting. I've heard those rumors. I'm not sure. Let's wait to see if that's the case. But one thing is for sure, we should be able to verify every vote. And that's really the only way we're going to get out of this one. Every vote has to be verified. That's the only way we can be confident that this is a legitimate outcome. Other than that, we're being asked to believe we just have to take it all in trust. Imperial John says the Democrats are going to get away with it. The Republicans will do nothing as usual. But once they get away with this, once they will do it again. I disagree, Imperial John, and let me tell you why. If the Democrats get away with this, there will never be another Republican president. Because if the Democrats get away with this, they will stack the Supreme Court, they will remove the whole business of the Electoral College, and they will ensure that that it becomes impossible for a Republican president. You see, this is why I'm so agitated about it. I think this means that we now witness a one-party state rising up in the United States. That one-party state is being driven by the Democrat Party and its media allies, big business, big tech, including Silicon Valley. This is the fundamental issue that I see. And so you see, the GOP has to fight for President Trump, because if they think that they can sacrifice President Trump and then in 4 years' time or 2 years' time try to fight back, they can forget it. That's not how it's going to work this time. This is it. This is, if you like, the Great Reset, US style. The Democrats and their allies are going to reconfigure the electoral situation in such a dramatic way that there's not going to be enough votes for Republicans. Biden has said in one of his more sentient moments, he intends to, I think it's 20 million dreamers he's going to offer citizenship to. So 20 million illegals are going to get the right to vote. Who do you think they're going to vote for? They're going to vote Democrat. Biden has said lots of things, and even if he fulfills half of them, it's going to be vastly difficult. So the only thing that I see coming out of this one is it's essential that President Trump stays in the White House, fights from the White House, does not accept this situation, and that every vote cast in any of this particular individual states where there's an impression of skullduggery, every vote must be checked and validated, and all lawful votes included, and any vote which can't be seen to be lawful or legal must be discarded. That's what they've done. I see Chris is saying it looks like they've wangled the Senate as well. It's interesting, Chris, I haven't seen that, but if that's the case, then that really does open up the floodgates to what I've said. And commentators don't seem to understand this. They don't understand this is not, oh, well, look, President Trump just has to lick his wounds, accept he's been defeated, step down, and look, in 4 years' time, let's see. That's not understanding what's going to happen. This is a radical Democrat party. This is the party of BLM. This is the party of Antifa. And this is the party that once it wields supreme executive power, it will implement that executive power. That needs to be understood from coast to coast. It also means some other things. It means that, for example, China has now got what it wants. It's got its candidate in the White House. It will have, if this goes through, its candidate in the White House. How do you think that's going to work out for the world? How do you think that's going to work out for the UK when it comes to the EU? Biden, in those moments when his consciousness is with him, is much more pro-EU than pro-UK. Biden is pro-Pakistan, not pro-India. Biden is not our friend. And yet I've seen nothing but one UK commentator after another sort of going, oh, Trump's a bad loser. Oh, Trump's trying to go use the courts to cheat the system. And this is really pathetic stuff from British commentators. It's one reason why, I'm glad to step aside from most of them. These are the people, the British commentariat, who in 2016 were so smug and patronizing about President Trump, Donald Trump, before he became president. Back then, when people like maybe us supported President Trump. And now, 4 years later, all these, posturing clowns in the media are happy that a senile 78-year-old can potentially now walk into the White House. Biden, in my view, won't last in the White House for more than a year or so for health reasons, which means Kamala Harris will become the first Black American president, the first Black female American president. So that's going to be, this is going to be an amazing period for the radical left. Not only that, but big tech, and by that I guess I mean predominantly Twitter and Facebook. I mean, they've been all over this election, censoring the voice of Republicans, censoring the president himself. I noticed today Twitter continues to censor President Trump. If you think cancer culture is bad at this point, give it the next 4 years till you see exactly what it's going to be like. Because Biden's not going to push back. The Democrats aren't going to push back against Twitter or against Facebook. That's not going to be happening. So those of you who are on those platforms, good luck with that. Because in my view, those platforms will become entirely hostile to authentic conservative voices. Oh yes, they'll promote the fake conservatives, and there's no shortage of them. But genuine conservatives are going to become as rare as hen's teeth on those big social media platforms as a result of what could happen in the next period. So that's another massive problem that we face. We also face, for example, the fact that Biden, the US just a couple of days ago left the Paris Climate Accord. Biden will now sign the US back into the Paris Climate Accord, which will, of course, further strangle the US economy. Biden will also, in the same way as President Trump has withdrawn funding for the grotesque World Health Organization, or if you like, the Chinese World Health Organization, he'll start to fund it again. So as you can see, all the enemies of decency around the world win when the Democrats win. And they all lose if Trump loses. So George Orwell says, the last 4 years, the Democratic Party didn't accept the result from 2016, screaming Marussians, but nothing to see here, folks, regarding this election. You're absolutely right, George. That's exactly how it's been. But, we are being asked, we just have to shut up and accept this. Chris says, Biden hid away for months. Harris did no TV interviews. Biden, yes, there was Hunter's, the laptop from hell, and yet on the basis of that, apparently that enthused people. Consider this, you all saw the rallies that President Trump did, huge rallies across the states, massive enthusiasm for the president. And yet Biden, for many of those days when the president was with tens of thousands of supporters, Biden was in his basement having a nap. When he did turn out, he was lucky to get 25, 30 supporters standing in strange little circles. I'm sure you saw those photographs. So Biden, low energy candidate, a candidate who did very little electioneering. And in the back of that, he's recorded the biggest victory for a Democrat in many, many decades. I ask you, is that plausible? I don't think so. I think the reality is that this is an absolute nightmare scenario that has developed. Some of us said, if you listen to back what I've been saying over the last couple of months, the Democrats were obvious. Hillary Clinton said it right when she said this election wasn't over until every vote was cancelled. She said every vote. She didn't say every legal vote. She said every vote. And that's exactly what's happened. Every potentially fraudulent vote, every potential shenanigans, those are the things that have swung this for Slow Joe. And of course, the UK media are exuberant about this. The US mainstream media are exuberant about this. And as I say, the countries like China will be exuberant, very happy about all of this. And I suppose it's natural that some of us, including me, feel a bit depressed about it. But yes, Chris, I agree. This is the big fix. Thing about that is if you sort of talk about the big fix or whatever on Twitter or Facebook, you're likely to find your channel suddenly taken down. The reason I'm only able to stream to YouTube is because Facebook have stopped me streaming live to Facebook, which was nice. So I would emphasize again, if you want to hear me on all my live streams, and I've got some great ones coming up next week, make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. YouTube seems to be reasonably balanced in these issues. But you've seen what Facebook have been up to, and probably worst of all, Twitter, actually. They are the most egregious in terms of their behavior. But anyway, it's not all just across. It's not, but as if this wasn't bad enough, we've also had on Thursday, the sight of England going into the second national lockdown. Wonder how you feel about that. If you live in England, are you happy to be locked up for the next month? The thing about the lockdown is that we all now know that the presentation, that the Halloween special spectacular presentation by Patrick Vance and Chris Whitty using data, which they now admit was wrong. It was indeed very fanciful. They've now backtracked in that. But Boris used that data to lock us up. And so we are locked up. And I've seen things in the last couple of days that honestly make me feel just what is happening in this country. You're not allowed to demonstrate in more than numbers of two people in a demonstration, according to Priti Patel. I'm sorry, Home Secretary, but that's a disgraceful decision to have made. This country must allow peaceful protest. I wonder if Black Lives Matters wanted to do a protest. Do you think you'd stop that? No. But if it's people protesting lockdown, will you stop them? Yes. And you've seen it in Wales. Have you seen the evidence, folks, on social media of the police going into raiding churches? I think it was Methodist service, and breaking that up because that was in breach of what the North Korean dictatorship in Cardiff wants. I wonder, did they go into the mosques with the same degree of enthusiasm, lest any of them also choose not to conform? I don't know if that would happen, but I wonder if it did, would they? And in England, I've seen students protesting at Manchester, which I thought was pretty good, actually. Good on the students for actually standing up. I also saw some really sad scenes. I saw the police arresting a mother for the heinous crime of removing her elderly mother, in her final time, from a nursing home to take her home and nurse her at home. Now, the mother concerned was a nurse, so she's well able to do that. But the police arrested her. Unfortunately for us, her granddaughter actually videoed the whole thing. I saw that as one of the most awful things I've seen on social media. I also think that I'll come to your point in a moment, Matrix, by the way, about the Dover scenario. But I think the sights of the elderly in their care homes having to, just wave at their loved ones. And these are elderly people, folks, in their last maybe days or weeks on this earth, and they can't hug or kiss their loved ones. I'm sorry, that outrages me, absolutely outrages me and infuriates me. And it's the sheer inhumanity of it. I mean, there's no humanity of separating family, especially when the elderly members of family could be nearing the end. They shouldn't have to die alone. It is awful. It is just awful what is happening. Matrix talks about, of course, the invasion is still going on. Down Dover Way, the boats are still arriving. Yeah, well, of course the boats are still arriving because the UK intends to do absolutely nothing about the votes. I'm afraid, folks, this is a fake Conservative government. It's turned out to be a very authoritarian Conservative government. An authoritarian government. You could debate if Boris is a Conservative. I don't think he is. And one of the other things, by the way, that really concerns me is, did you see that the furlough scheme's been extended until March? Why would that be? Because we're only going into a 4-week lockdown, aren't we? So why would you extend the furlough scheme for another 5 months or 4 months? Unless, maybe they're planning to extend the furlough scheme or the lockdown. So I don't know how you folks would feel about that, but I can smell it in the air. This government intends to keep the domestic population pretty much locked up on the alleged grounds of fighting coronavirus at a time when the data does not suggest that, number one, there is a second wave. The data doesn't suggest that. And number two, that lockdowns themselves are socially and economically destructive and do much more harm than good. So if that's the case, why would you have them? So it is, as Kim says, the breakdown of social order is coming. I actually think you're right, Kim, to a degree, but the difficulty is that so many people conform. John says he thought Boris was a classic liberal, but he seems to be more like a blue Marxist. Actually, it's a very good point. I don't know what Boris is, but I mean, it's important that we share these things. Matrix says, no money, no work, no money for me, no furlough, no handouts, angry now. But apparently viruses don't have second waves. Well, actually, Chris, that's right. Or more generally speaking, these kind of the coronavirus family, which is what we're dealing with COVID-19, have never had a second wave. But every autumn and winter, you get an uptick in respiratory illnesses, and that's what we're seeing. But on the back of this uptick, which was entirely predictable, by the way, were being locked down. I hope that people do really think very hard about that, which they're being asked to endure. Because, put it like this: if the politicians who are locking us up were themselves taking a 20% pay cut, that might be make it a wee bit more bearable. But they're not, because the politicians that are locking you up are taking a £3,000 a year increase in pay. Do you see how it works? Yeah, Big D London says the woke student union may yet turn. Well, yeah, where is the student union be? The student unions be? I mean, in my day, student unions were always very radical, fighting against the government. But that doesn't seem to have been the case. But now it seems some of the students themselves are saying, listen, we're not going to university and we're not going to be locked up. And do I blame them? No. I'm not so old that I can't vaguely remember what it was like when I went to university in my first year and second and third subsequent years. I remember those years. And to think that the university experience is now being boiled down to being locked up either in your halls of residence or your student house, and you can't go out and have a drink and you can't meet your friends. This is stripping away the very essence of being a student, don't you think? So on that basis, I don't blame the students for getting angry and getting very, very annoyed. But it was interesting to also see the police in London attacking the rally of people who were opposing the lockdown. So I don't remember them doing that when it came to the BLM and Extinction Rebellion protests. In fact, when it came to the BLM, the police were too busy on their knees. So it's a funny old world, isn't it? When it seems some protests are acceptable and other protests aren't. And that goes back to Kim's point. That then makes us wonder if the social order itself is in the process of unraveling. A lot of people say to me that, hang on a second, Chris says lockdown isn't real. People are just going to go about their work and business. Yeah, well, actually, Chris, I mean, again, like a really good point. And it's been the same here in Northern Ireland where I live. And from what I talk to my Scottish friends, it's similar as well. A lot of people completely ignore what they're doing. So the rule of six and all this nonsense, nobody pays any attention to it. I believe a lot of people don't anyway. But the pubs are closed. The restaurants are closed. Tourism is pretty much closed. So a very important sector, which does employ pretty low paid workers, is being sacrificed. You have to understand that. It's sacrificing an entire sector which employs millions of people. And to do this at Christmas is criminal. And hello, Tigers Bay, good to see you on the stream. Peter says, I believe it will only be white people who get the vaccine. Don't know about that, Peter, because we're being told apparently that the virus seems to target BAME people more than any others, which I find curious. May or may not be true. But it seems that this government is determined to keep us locked up, to keep us masked up. I was out in the shops this afternoon, and here we are in November, and I still haven't worn a mask, and I'm not going to wear a mask. I am exempt from wearing a mask, and there we have it. But I have to say, folks, when I go into a shop, a store, a big store, and I'm the only person not wearing a mask, it's a strange experience. It's a strange experience, is all I can say, and it makes me wonder, gosh, is this what the UK has become? A nation of frightened mask wearers walking around thinking that these little pieces of paper give them any protection from a virus which is so small it can either go through or out from their masks. Is this what the UK has become? Louise says, Bewley in Devon is like a ghost town. Is that, Louise, because it's mainly a tourist town? I mean, I'm guessing the towns which are mostly tourist orientated must be really, really suffering at the moment. So yes, the tourism sector and the hospitality sector is like, to me, it's like it's being destroyed. And I think there's a reason for that, because we're all social beings. I mean, I'm a social being, believe it or not. And so we like to be with each other. We like to meet with our fellow men and women and sit around the table over a restaurant and have a chat, in the pub, chatting, talking, enjoying each other's company. If you can stop people doing that, then you're fundamentally weakening structures that have been with us for centuries. And yet, to me, that's what's happening. So the game seems to be to stop us socializing, get us all stuck at home behind computer screens so that our friendships are only virtual. So you don't actually get to shake hands. Oh, you can't shake hands. I mean, that's instant death, isn't it? If you did that, you can't shake hands. You can't give someone a hug to greet them. You can't do the stuff, to me, which is synonymous with humanity. And that is, I think, probably not a coincidence. Chris says, did you see Sir Simon Stevens being wheeled out yesterday? The NHS must be saving a fortune in wages in medicine. Well, I mean, there's another point that just to talk about for a moment. We're being told at the moment, we're back to March. This is all about, we have to save the NHS, apparently. But I've got a real problem with that. And here's my problem. The NHS is there to save us, not the other way around. But we're being, so in a way, I think, and I felt this back in March and April, so it's no different. The NHS is prioritized around our lives, but that's wrong. You can't have a health service that's more important than the health of the people that it serves. And yet that's exactly the situation. Tigers Bay is right. Right. He says people need to educate themselves about germs and viruses and how they are transmitted. See, this is half the problem. People don't educate themselves, and they go to the big media. Chris talks about grand advance. Well, that is me. Yes. I've got my little 10-week-old granddaughter, and nothing will stop me seeing my granddaughter. And yet, that's kind of where we are. Many grandparents can't see their grandkids. This is evil. I mean, that's one word I would use to describe this. Not just authoritarian, but actually evil, because it's dividing families. And it is, as I said earlier, especially the most vulnerable elderly people in nursing homes are yet again being left to die alone. George says, TikTok videos matter, David. Well, of course you're so right. You're absolutely right. I mean, we've got to give those nurses time to work out their synchronized dance routines, don't we? I mean, that's what being in the NHS is all about. It's about producing a decent routine that you can then whack up on the Chinese spy app. What could be better? What could be a better use of NHS time on your expenses, on your salary, your taxes? Kim says, if you can get to the local war memorial for Remembrance Day on Sunday, don't be deterred. Well, that's going to be very interesting, actually, what happens this Remembrance Sunday, because this is a year unlike any other. But that's only because we let them make it a year unlike any other. And of course, I don't encourage anyone to break the law. I certainly discourage that. But remember, COVID regulations, are precisely that. And there are matters of common law, which I'm sure you've seen on social media videos, where there's most definitely a grey area. But it'll be interesting to see what happens on Remembrance Day. For example, will Her Majesty wear a mask? That'll be interesting to see. So far, she hasn't appeared in public, or at least to the best of my knowledge. But if she does, I think that's going to be game over, actually, for this country. If the head of state masks up, and I'm sure Boris and Hancock will be, using influence to make sure that she does that. So it's a pretty sad state of affairs, all things considered, that we have, and it's very, very hard to find stuff that's positive, and that's, I guess, just the reality of these times. Meanwhile, I also read today, by the way, that I see the Edinburgh woolen mill collapse has Yeah, see, Edinburgh will and will have been put into administration. Now, that retailer has, I think, 2,500 people plus working across the UK. And today, almost 900 jobs were lost across these chains. So this is really sad stuff. And this is my point. We're going to hemorrhage jobs, but I think that's what the government wants. Chris says, what will the end game be? When will the money run out, and how many people will unemployed? Well, Chris, let me offer up a theory, at least just a theory. But I think the government wants to see large numbers of people unemployed. Unemployed people have to then rely on the government. And this is when I think we may see the introduction of universal basic income, something which I've always opposed. I oppose UBI because to me, it's not income because you're not earning your money. You're just basically sitting there and the state's giving you income, giving you money that's unearned. And you can, I presume at that basis, have some sort of a life, but you're totally dependent on the state, just like in China. So because you become completely reliant on the state, you will do as the state says. Now, when will the money run out? Well, you see, Chris, this is the great mystery because this so-called conservative government has spent money like it's going out of fashion. But I guess, the World Bank is there to print money and to support these bankrupt governments. And I'm not sure that the money actually will run out because I think it's a very deep pool of money that they will use. How many people will be unemployed? By this point, I thought we would have had millions unemployed, but Rishi keeps splashing the cash. Pat says, I'm usually the only one without a mask when I shop. People around like showing off how much they care by wearing a mask. Yes, they even wear a mask while driving alone. Hey, Pat, that's a really good point. I meant to say this. When I was out earlier today without my mask, I saw an elderly couple driving with their masks on. What did they think? What did they think they were protecting themselves from? Each other? What happens when they go home? I mean, do they still wear a mask? This is really, really strange behavior. Kim says Jeff Bezos is raking it in. Absolutely right. The more the high street closes down, the richer Amazon and other such institutions become. And George is right, by the way. Basic universal income is socialism in disguise, which in turn is communism in disguise. This is what I see people advocate UBI. The people who advocate it are at best naive. I'll put it no more harshly than that. They are best naive. The fact is that UBI is incompatible with if you like, an industrious economy. Instead, it's a way to create a serf economy where people are reliant on the state. And if you become reliant on the state, you do what the state says, you shut up, you don't question the state, you don't go on social media and say nasty things or naughty things that might hurt the feelings of the state. This is where the danger lies, and this is where I see it going. This is where people say to me, well, 2020 has been a bad year, but like 2021, things can only get better. I disagree. I absolutely disagree with that. Back in March, the government got away with what they were doing, and that's emboldened them. And that's why we are where we are now. That's why we are at this point in 2020, in November 2020. The government has realized that people aren't pushing back. And because the people aren't pushing back, the government pushes on. They're not scared of us. That's the truth. And now in the States, as I said, to go back to the first topic, it's quite likely that the US people will now get a dose of further lockdowns. Or there again, they might not, because one of my other predictions is that I think coronavirus might vanish in the next period of time. It certainly vanished from the American news cycle for the last 2 or 3 days. Isn't that strange after months and months and months in 2020 of my coronavirus, my pandemic? All of a sudden, hey, Joe Biden's like to be elected. Let's talk about Joe Biden and let's not talk about coronavirus, the C word. Couple of other comments here. When this lockdown is over and the infection rate is still high, what next? Well, Chris, the answer is simple: more lockdown. Angus says, if the government wants to treat us in a communist way and the media being the greatest weapon. We can all see it. We are not talking about it. Well, you're right, Angus, but I'm talking about it, and I know others are as well. We see this as exactly what it is. Kim says it'll be, you want universal income, you'll have to take the vaccine. That's possible as well. That's entirely possible. The government's scared of BLM. Yes, you're right, MGA Gamester. You're absolutely right. But why is the government scared of BLM? I think we need to reflect on that for a moment. And why is the government not scared of lockdown protesters? I mean, I'll just leave that question floating there, but I suggest there may be a reason for that. But so, it's a very, very difficult time for us all, and it's certainly made more difficult by the social media tyrants on Twitter and Facebook, who have proven to be as much as part of the swamp and the deep state as anywhere else. And this is, here in the UK, we see it. We see the way that this week the media has salivated at the prospect of President Trump being defeated. And we've seen how the media here urged the government to lock us down for the second time. And you see, people say to me, but why did the media want you locked down? I'll tell you why. Because then you're sitting at home and you're sitting watching TV. You're actually consuming their product. So it's good for them. So more lockdown equals more revenue from advertisers on media, on TV. That's why they want it. Hi, Super J. Very welcome. Thanks very much for being on the stream tonight. So this is the way it works, you see. The journalists have been encouraging Boris to follow Nicola Sturgeon and Mark Drakeford in Wales and lock England down. And tonight, on this Friday night, the English pubs are empty, and pub life is at an end for a month. But I don't believe. I mean, Boris is cute enough to say that, well, when we get to December the 2nd, then England, all things being equal, if the R rate comes down, England will revert to the tier system. But if you're in the tier system, I mean, this is the killer. This is not good news. If you're in tier 3, again, you're fundamentally screwing up the hospitality sector and the tourism sector, and you're massively impugning people's liberties. So this is, it's not as if life restores. I mean, the only concession that this awful government will do is, I believe, when it comes to Christmas Day and Boxing Day, they'll offer some sort of, rule of 7 or rule of 8 or rule of 12 or something like that. And the media will hail this as a great event. And then we'll be instantly back into lockdown. And certainly from January on, we will be back locked down. That much is obvious. Kim says the pubs open in Wales next week. Yeah, Kim, but for how long? How long do you think that's going to be? And by the way, one of the most ridiculous things I've seen is the Welsh government determining what are essential items in store and in supermarkets and which aren't. So you can buy an avocado, but you can't buy a child's toy. I mean, how ludicrous is that? I see some of you folks talking about Farage on Good Morning Britain. Didn't see Farage on Good Morning Britain. Susanna Reid is just as bad as Piers Morgan, makes me want to throw up. Yeah, I was actually, many years ago, I was interviewed by Susanna Reid when she worked for the BBC. I found her, I've got to say, a very professional interviewer. But yes, Connor, it's been a slow news week. Well, you're right, Connor. Basically, nothing's happened this week. It's been remarkably slow, hasn't it? Apart from the complete meltdown of democracy in the United States, apart from England being put back under house arrest, apart from those things, apart from the hemorrhage of more jobs, apart from hospitality sector being absolutely screwed, apart from those things, it's been absolutely, I mean, there's been nothing else of significance happening. I think actually there's a point which, I remember the time when the political left was anti-war. Do you remember? Well, those of you who are old enough like me, will remember all the anti-war marches of the 70s and the 80s. That was very much their thing. Even into the 90s, there was anti-war. But along the lines, things have changed. And I believe that, I mean, had Hillary Clinton got in 2016, we would have been back in wars again. And if Biden gets into the White House, there will be wars again, for sure. Absolutely banker that one. And you know why that is? Because vested interests make money from wars. There's lots of profits in wars. There's lots of profit in killings. President Trump stopped the US getting involved in pointless wars. He stopped that. And I think that made a lot of people very unhappy. But now they've got their stool pigeon potentially in the White House, the wars can happen again. But the left have nothing to say about it. They seem quite content with the idea of especially if it's against Russia or any Russia surrogates. I can see that happening. Frida says, Susanna isn't professional anymore. She's been hanging out with Morgan too long. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as I say, I only can speak, Frida, of my experience. And when I was interviewed, myself and Milo Yiannopoulos and George Galloway were on the same show. My goodness, heady times. In fact, actually, if you tune in to one of my Open Dialogus stream next week, I'll be interviewing, amongst others, George Galloway, I think. So more details on that to follow. But yeah, she was pretty professional back then. But I think the whole Susanna and Susanna Reid. I mean, Piers Morgan. I can't watch Piers Morgan, and so yeah, I don't watch that. Pat says I stand with Trump all the way. Same with me. I do. I mean, I really feel passionate about this. I stood with Trump before he was elected. I've stood with him all the way through. There is talk that if he does lose, I don't know if you saw this one, folks, he's going to set up Trump TV, and he's going to bring, it's reputed anyway, he would then bring across the likes of Tucker Carlson, the likes of Sean Hannity, the likes of Laura, what's her name? I forget her second name. The only remaining talent on Fox, because as I say, Fox has shot itself. Actually, that'd be a good headline. That's quite a good headline, isn't it? Fox shoots itself for the first time ever. This week, Fox News showed that it actually is part of the swamp. And yeah, I was sad that, by the way, Laura Loomer didn't get in. But it's not Lawrence Loomer. Thank you, Kim. Laura Ingraham. I do like Laura. The only people I listen to or watch is Tucker Carlson, sometimes Sean Hannity, and as Kim said, Laura Ingraham. They're the only people really on Fox that I can be bothered with. The rest of them are pretty awful. He won't be inviting John. Well, it's interesting. He won't be inviting John Gaunt onto Trump TV. Not aware of that, actually. Big day in London. What did John Gaunt say? I mean, I do follow John, but I've not seen stuff from him in recent days. But as I say, my to coin a phrase from my musical hero, my aim remains true. I've always supported Trump. I will continue to support Trump. I want to see Trump stay in the White House. I don't think he should concede. This is not democracy as we understand it being enacted in the United States. So I hope that all unlawful ballots or fraudulent ballots are hunted down, removed from the system, and then let's see who's going to be president. Let's make sure that it's an honest election. Fair play must be seen to be done. But yeah, so someone says, again, John says, if Biden and the Democrats steal the election, what's to stop Trump running in 24 with Tucker Carlson? Well, I'll tell you what, and this is the point that I'll probably leave you with this point, but I want to make this point so that you understand. If Biden gets in, the demographics of the states are going to change dramatically very quickly. He has said he will give the 25 to 30 million illegals, which they call dreamers in leftist circles, the right to vote, John. So if he does that, Doesn't matter if God Almighty stood in on the Republican ticket, he still couldn't get in. This is the point. This, now, yes, there's a line, don't start me talking. I could talk all night. Yeah. I think, Chris, we both know where that one comes from. So this is my point, John. I do understand your point, and part of me thinks, oh, it'd be lovely to have Trump again in 4 years, but he's going to be 78 then, and yet Tucker Carlson's a very charismatic. He's a decent. He seems to be a decent guy. Although I know some people think he's a sellout. Somebody mentioned one of the people that I do watch, Sticks and Hammer, and I think he called out Tucker for a bit of a sellout. But hey, again, from what I've seen of Tucker, he's pretty much okay. But the point is, anyway, the point is this: we mustn't let Biden in the White House. A Biden victory means the end of the Republic. I don't want to be proven right in this one because it's a Pyrrhic victory. I want it not to happen. And that's why the Matrix is right. Trump has until, I think it's the 21st of January, 2021 to sort this one out. So we've got months. And I well remember, again, I'm old enough to remember whenever Al Gore do you remember the issue when Al Gore was running against George Bush Jr. and the hanging chads in Dade Valley and all of that, and that went through the courts and all of that stuff. The left were very happy to drag that one out for a couple of months. So let's see President Trump emulate them. Super J says, it feels very strange being on the losing side. Well, you see, Super J, I disagree. I think President Trump has won the election on lawful votes. So I'm not on I'm not on the losing side, but it feels horrible to be on the cheated side. And I think that's where we are in this one. I think that this is not democracy as we understand it. I did a live stream last night with a friend of mine from the States, a lovely Hindu lady called Purnima Nath, and she was making it clear that she understood how dangerous this is for the Republic. Chris says, whatever happened to John Gaunt? I used to hear you on his radio show. That's when I first heard about Bias BBC. Yeah, John was very kind to promote Bias BBC, Chris. I haven't spoken to John in a while. Whenever I was taken down from Twitter, John did contact me, but he never then, I haven't heard from him since. And, whatever. Is John Gaunt, is he now in favor of President Biden? Those of you who follow him might be able to tell me. I don't know if that's the case. However, if he is, that's not smart politics. Everything I do it for principle. Now, look, I could be wrong. I get that. And not everyone has to agree with my principles. I get that as well. But it's passionate. I believe in stuff. I believe in freedom. I believe in liberty. I believe in capitalism. I believe in all the core values at the heart. And that's what drives me. So I don't flip-flop. How can I flip-flop? Because I can't discard what I believe in. I fundamentally believe that a Democrat White House will lead to the end of the American Republic. It will mean that essentially. So is that Chris? So just can someone clarify? Is John Gaunt in favor of a Biden becoming president, or is he in favor of President Trump fighting as I am? Because I'm absolutely clear where I stand in this one. I'm 100% in favor of Trump. Trump has to prevail. He must. And I'll tell you who's given me a lot of hope, actually. Here's a positive thing. Steve Bannon has been excellent in this one. And yes, I saw that Twitter removed one of the Steve Bannon Twitter platforms, not all of them, but one of them over a comment that he made that he probably could have phrased a little bit better. Isn't it? Someone says Gonti is uber liberal. Is he? Well, I remember the time he wasn't uber liberal, but look, John's entitled to his opinion. John's also entitled to, for example, come on one of my shows and we can discuss it, or I'll come on his show. So if any of you folks follow Gonti, and want to have a debate, want to listen to a debate between Gonti and me on the issue of the United States presidential election, get in contact with him. See if he's prepared to do that. As I say, I respect John's point of view, but my point of view is fixed, and that is that I want to see President Trump stay in the White House. So look, that's pretty much how it is, folks. So here we are on a Friday night. If wherever you are in the UK, I know you're not down the pub because you can't be. I know you're not eating out in a restaurant because you can't be. And I know that sometimes these moments seem quite dark, just to be clear. Matrix said it earlier, though, and this is something I've always believed all my life. Sometimes the darkest hour is the one before the dawn. So I will leave you to have a lovely weekend, but just thinking about that particular fact. Oh, Gonti is pro-mask wearing, is he? Gosh. Well, to be clear, I absolutely oppose mask wearing. And he doesn't take kindly to non-mask wearers. Someone should ask him, what is his scientific validation for wearing masks? Because if you don't have a scientific validation for wearing masks, then I've got to wonder, why are you doing it? Is it just virtue signaling? Do you want to feel good? But yeah, the darkest hour is often before the dawn. So I'm looking outside here, and it's black as can be. Yeah. Trump, I just finished with my friend Connor says, Trump was always the chaos president. I think this could all be part of the chaos. Well, that's a really interesting comment, Connor, and to a degree, you may be right. I know, and is this the storm? I don't know. I just don't know. The only thing I think is that a Democrat White House will be incredibly bad, and I believe they can. The only thing is Trump's got a Supreme Court, which I think is going to be rock solid now in terms of not allowing necessarily the president to whoever the future president is going to be, to do really dangerous things. So that's something. But I have to say, I just think there's too many questions about this US presidential election. We've seen too many things that strike me as being very, very strange. When 170-year-olds get to vote, you've got to ask yourself, how's that happening? When the legions of the dead rise up and vote, you have to ask, how is that happening? And yet it appears that's exactly what happened. And the media are saying, yes, Matrix, I know it's a storm. Yeah, I get that. I'm familiar with all of that. But this storm needs to sweep over America for the next couple of months. So there should be Trump must not for one moment accept defeat. And we need to be essentially really going to drain the swamp. Well, you've got 2 months to drain the swamp. Otherwise, the swamp's going to drain us. And my friend Chris here is, of course, quoting here from a Nick Lowe song. What's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? And the first line of that goes, as I walk through this wicked world. And my goodness, it is a wicked world. But there's always hope, and there's other important things as well out there. And folks, we always have each other as well. So none of us are alone. We all have strength, I think, by virtue of the fact that we can at least stay the course. So look, that's it from me for tonight. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for your support during the week. I hope you enjoyed the different streams. I had so many interesting people on this week. I've got some great guests coming along next week on my different channels. So I hope you tune in to watch me then. And in the meantime, of course, you can find me on Parler. You can find me on Facebook, whilst they still allow me on Facebook. And of course, I'm not on Twitter, heaven forbid. But I just wanted to, one of my regulars, Linda, says, sorry I missed you, David. I'll catch up. Just heard my brother, his wife and daughter have COVID. Biden a disaster. Yeah. So sorry to hear that, Linda. Hope it's not too bad. Remember that the COVID itself is perhaps not just quite the the medieval plague that sometimes the media suggests. Anyway, That's it from me. Have a great weekend, everybody, regardless of all this malarkey. Look forward to catching up with you on Monday night. I'll be back then. And in the meantime, have a great time. And I hope Matrix is right. He says, all the best movies have nerve-jangly endings. Keep the faith. I'm doing my best to keep the faith. It is a dark hour, and we have to stay strong, that's for sure. Thanks, folks. Catch you all really soon. Thanks for being here with me. Good night.